We're going to start with this workshop. I don't know if it's a lunch and learn or not, or if it's a workshop. We are going to be doing a few exercises and it's structured as a workshop, but I just really like the lunch and learn iconography and everything that Juan did. So I just took it and used it for the presentation. So we're going to call it a lunch and learn, but it's really a workshop. So the agenda is we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the fundamentals of UX writing, what are the key concepts, and actually understanding what is UX writing. Then we are going to view a process. It's going to be 4 steps in which you guys can actually take with you and apply to make sure that if you follow those 4 steps, you are going to arrive to great content that is centered in a good user experience. Then I'm going to give you a few microcopy tips, how to actually produce great content when you have a space constraint. Then we're going to do a workshop in which we are actually going to apply the process so you guys can have that fresh and you can have the experience of doing it. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about UX writing and research. What is the relationship? What are research tools that we can actually use when creating content? And then we're going to talk about how to test content that is a little bit different when we are testing the whole design, for example. Sure, yes.
Quick little trick, if you hit Command and then dot, you can get rid of the side panels.
Awesome, great, thank you. So we are going to be talking about the fundamentals of UX writing. What is UX writing? The formal definition of UX writing is the art of designing all the words, pictures, and videos that a user sees and hears when he or she is interacting with software. And it's not random that we call it the art of designing, because when we are writing, we are also going to be designing, because as you're going to see, we are going to have a process and we are going to be projecting what we want. It's not just creative writing what we're doing. We are going to follow a process the same way as design follows a process. So that's why when the first content strategists or UX writers define this, they define it as an art of designing, but instead of designing components or designing headers, we are going to be designing words, pictures, and videos. So like I was saying, it's not copywriting. UX writing, it's very different than copywriting because we follow a user process. And because we do research, we do testing, we do all the things that we are going to learn in this workshop that differentiates an UX writer from a copywriter. Also, something important, it's not just filling out blank spaces with words. In a lot of companies where they have UX writers, the first thing that the UX writer complains about is that, oh, the designer just gives me Loren Ipsum or a blank space, and he's just like, oh, do your magic and put words inside a space. No, it's a lot more about understanding what the user needs to hear. So that's what we're going to be learning, how to interpret what are the words or the pictures or the videos that the user needs to hear. And why are also the pictures and the videos part of UX writing? Because a mistake that was previously made as well was that people sometimes use photography as a graphic tool. You know, you can be like, oh, I want a little bit of color here, so I'm going to add a picture. No, an image is an extremely powerful tool of communication. The representation, there's no difference between the sign and the representation of the sign. So you have to be very careful when you're using videos or images to make sure that they are actually communicating something and helping you communicate anything. If not, just use a gradient if you want to add color. So that is why it's important to, if you're going to also be choosing images or if you're going to be choosing videos, to follow the same process of words in the UX writing process. So these are the 3 key concepts, and this was first defined by Google in their material design a few years ago. And I adapted it from that to define what are the key concepts UX writing must have. First, it must be direct. How do we define direct? We define direct as clear and concise messaging. Then it has to be usable. What is a usable wording? It's a wording that's functional and also motivating. And then it has to have personality. How do we know that it has personality? If it follows the voice and tone defined by the brand. So these are the three musts. And we're just gonna start having a little bit of fun now, and you guys can open up your mics. And we're gonna be reading this content, which it says, proceeding with the operation delete will erase the contents of your hard drive. What do you wish to do? Proceed or delete? Do you guys think this is clear?
No. Because it sounds like if I click proceed, I'm going to delete it anyways. And then if I click delete, it's going to delete.
Definitely. So this is an example of what not to do. Like, I think it's really easy to see when a wording is not clear. So this would definitely need to be rewritten. Now, let's read this. There are purchased items on the iPhone, Jamie's iPhone, that should not be transferred to your iTunes library. You would transfer these items to your library before updating this iPhone. Are you sure you want to continue? Is this concise? Do you think anyone would spend time reading this?
No, and even if they did, they still wouldn't like I'm still not sure what I'm doing if I hit cancel or continue.
Definitely. So these are two examples of how you should not write your wording. So I think it's really easy to see when something is not clear and it's not concise. So that should be like the first question you ask yourselves after you are writing wordings. Is this clear? Is this concise? And it's because we're all users now, in a sense, it's definitely going to stand out to you when you're not writing something that's clear or concise. Then it has to be functional and motivating. Let's read this. It says, review. Next time, save your clicks. Type to change status without leaving your keyboard. Is this wording functional? It's adding a little bit of information that might save you time in the beginning. And it's sort of motivating as well, because it's saying, hey, next time, save your clicks. So it's actually giving me, the user, an incentive in why I would want to read this or why I would want to learn this, because I might be able to save clicks.
I'm receiving value by following something.
Exactly. That is the definition of something being like functional and motivating. It has to add value.
I like that they also highlight the buttons that you need to click. It's not just text, it's actually bordered and it's huge, and it's very apparent what you need to click. So yeah, that's something that I see utilized that's underutilized. That's actually very helpful.
Definitely. And then we look at this example. It says, that's it. Now go and change the world. And don't forget to have fun. Pay with ClickUp. Hey, this is actually using copy to motivate me, to give me like that little sparkle, give me a smile, like, hey, go ahead, pay and have fun. It's using words to motivate me. Now, the third one is it has to have personality. And I'm going to tell you guys the difference between voice and tone. So we can start to differentiate that, because that's something also really important in UX writing, because the voice of a brand, it's always the same. Let's say Mark Ruffalo is our brand. He would be born, and this would be this information. The brand is born in that state, occupation, he's an actor, years active, works. Like a voice would be the info in Wikipedia that you would have like of a brand. And Mark Ruffalo is one, no? He's always gonna be born the same day. The information is just one. But the tone changes based on the channel, changes based on the different places where the brand can be. So we have this typical example that I think was in social media all over the place. So Mike Ruffalo is one in LinkedIn, he's different in Facebook, he's different in Tinder, and he's different in Instagram. So this is tone. Tone is a person, a brand, in this case, Mark Ruffalo, that adapts itself based on the context. So when you're writing and you're going to be reading the different voice and tone guidelines, just remember that the voice has to be consistent and has to be the same throughout the whole experience. But the tone is going to change. Like, for example, in a checkout, you might not want to be very playful because like people there are putting their credit card information. You want to make sure that you're probably not going to probably write a joke or something more playful. But maybe in the homepage, you can be a little bit more playful, like in the Tinder or Instagram. So here we're going to look at, this is an example. This is also from Google Material Design. So here you can see all of the guidelines applied. Instead of saying failure, you actually say what was the failure. You had a sign in error. So here you're being clear and you're also being functional. You're describing exactly what's wrong. And here you're saying an authentication error has occurred. And then also you're saying to the user what happened. You entered an incorrect password. It's being functional and motivating because it's giving the user an answer of how to get out there. So this is just an example for you guys to have in how to go from something that's not good to something that is good and applies and has the rules that we talk to apply. So I'm going to give you just a few tips that also should always apply, and these are fundamentals of UX writing. Write concisely, avoid long blocks of text. I'm going to be saying this a lot, but users don't read. I want you guys to tell me when was the last time you actually read a web page. We don't read web pages, we scan them and we look for the buttons where we have to click, or we look for the special information we want, but we don't read web pages like we read books. So it's important to avoid long blocks of text and write concisely. Also, avoid negative words. This is a rule that comes from communication, but it's also very important, especially in UX writing. Try never to use negative words or no, because that creates a negative experience. Also, try to avoid technical words unless they're extremely necessary or they're for a specific audience. Try to use universal words that could be understood by any user. Always write in the active voice, never in a passive voice. No, that's why we say click here or click. We don't say you should, or we always talk in an active voice. And make content scannable. This is all I'm going to say. You guys are all designers and you guys all probably know about the F patterns. And there was Norman Nielsen that studied a lot how text needs to be in order to be scannable. And if you guys want, I can give you those articles. That's all I'm going to say about the way graphically that content should be presented. And then use numbers, don't write them. Put number 1, don't write 1. Okay, so with these in mind, where we actually learned how UX writing must be, we are going to talk about the UX writing process. What is a method that we can apply in order to make sure that we write wordings that follow these principles? And as most of you know, there's a book called Lean UX that was written by Jeff Gottlieb and Josh Seiden. And in this book, what they talk about is that UX should always go through the process of study, learn, and build, or study, measure, and build. This should always be cycles in which we are constantly studying, learning, and building, studying, measuring, and building. And based on this book, for a few years ago, I developed this process in which you have 4 steps that you use content tools in order to first learn. We use a content brief to learn about the user, to learn about the problem. Then in the content brief, we study there the user problem and understand what is that we have to write. Then in the content prototype, we learn how to apply that user problem that we studied. In content creation, we build, And in content testing, we measure. Why is this important? Because following this process, it's what's gonna let us understand when we actually did things right and when we didn't do things right. And this is the main reason why UX writing is inside UX, because we are constantly iterating and we are constantly being a part of this process in where we study, learn, build, and measure. And we just keep it going forever and ever and ever and ever, because an interface is alive and it's always changing. So in the content brief, we study. What do we study? We try to study to understand the underlying objective of the communication. So this is where we define what is the user problem and what is the user context. Why? What is the user objective? Why, or what is our company's objective? Why do we want someone to actually understand this content? Why do we want someone to connect with our interface or use us? Who is the target user that this is going to be consumed by? And then where? What are the channels and what are the interface touch points? This is an example of a Reebok content brief where it has this information. Then, once we have this defined, that we have the content brief defined, we go to the content prototype in where we learn. We actually study what we applied. And this is a tool that especially is very important for information architecture and defining the hierarchy of things. So we go from this document where it's just have words and it has what are the user objectives, what is the user problem, what are the company goals. It's like more like a functional document. And we start defining what is the most important thing we have to tell the user. What is the second most important thing we have to tell the user? Here's an example, Dropbox. They have a really famous UX writer that does this. I can also share with you guys the articles. And so here you can read it. It goes from something really simple and where someone writes, hi, we are Dropbox. We're inventing teamwork and we keep releasing tools and software that proves that. We designed around the way you work. You can take your docs anywhere, whether it's your phone or on the road. You can also upload, blah, blah, blah. It goes from the writing, what is the objective, what you have to say, directly to the interface. And here is an example. So this is how you would actually do this, right? Hire an alien for a day. Okay, you have the title, and here you define you don't define the words, but you define what is the content functionality that you're going to be writing. So you say, what is the number one pro about hiring an alien for your day? You don't say what is the number 2 pro or the number 3 pro. You actually write it out. So you say, take your business to infinity and beyond. Be the coolest among your friends. Discover what's to happen. You don't need to write the final content, but you need to be able to define it in a way so that the hierarchy of the information gets defined here in this step. So you see here, you don't say login, CTA. You say login, get started. You actually define what would be the function of that CTA. So this is a content prototype. It does look like a design prototype, but the difference is that we actually have the information architecture here. You say, okay, this is going to be the first thing that I'm going to say. This is going to be the second. This is going to be the third. And you don't say pricing info here like you may be saying a wireframe. You actually say simple universal pricing. You start defining what is the objective of the communication. These might not be the final wordings, but they do help you and they're a tool for you to actually define information architecture. And this is a very design content gray area. It's something usually done when in companies where they have both profiles of UX designer and UX writer. This is something that they do together, because here is where you might actually make design decisions that change based on the content. Because maybe you're finding out here, no, okay, the pricing needs to be at the beginning because in the storytelling, it makes more sense to have it before than afterwards, for example. So that is very important. After the content prototype, we have the content creation. Here is when we're actually going to be building. Here we're going to be building our content delivery. And the tools that you have to do this are the style guides, that are the boys and tones manuals that we talked about before. Another tool that is, two more tools that are very important are inspirational benchmark, like always keep like a folder of those. You probably do it in design, but start doing it also with wordings that, oh, that really stood in my head. Like that wording just I kept thinking about it hours after reading it. Like start doing benchmark inspiration, because maybe those ideas might come in handy later. And then also a dictionary or a thesaurus. Those are really important tools because we are actually writing. And that's something that UX writers always do. Just look up words, look up in the thesaurus and try to like play around a little bit. They use it for that. So this is an example of a style guide, for example, from Spotify. These are for their B2B business, for the partner guidelines. And they say how to write, for example, win free music for a year. No, you don't say that because Spotify is already free. You say win Spotify premium for a year, get lucky with 12 months. Style guides are important for this because they are rules that let us understand how we should write or how we shouldn't write. And this is a tool that I think helps a lot, especially when you have to write like a lot of content, which this is a brain map. So what you do is you have here, you can here put your user problem, no? Like for example, paying at checkout. And here you start, okay, purchasing could be your big word. And then you start thinking of synonyms or things that do into the payment experience. So seamless, one click, no hassle. You start like mapping from like big concepts to like words that represent those concepts. And this really helps a lot when you are in the writing process. This is a cool tool that you guys can use if you ever have to write, like maybe you have to redesign a whole page or you have to write like a big amount of content. And the fourth step, that is where we measure, that we are going to talk particularly about content testing later. So I'm not going to talk about it now. Just keep this in mind, the 3 steps that we talked about here, we used. So like I was saying, if we apply a process, we can learn from it and iterate. So just remember the first steps. First, we study in the content brief, where here we have defined the what, who, why, when, where. Then in the content prototype, we start applying the information of the content brief into information architecture, into a wireframe for content. So we start making the first decisions of what we're going to say first, what we're going to say second, and what we're going to say third. And then in the third step, we actually create the content. This would be like the high fidelity for design, where we actually think, okay, what are the final words that we are going to communicate to our user? And then the fourth step, content testing, forget about it for now. I'll explain it later. Okay, so now that we know the UX writing process, I'm going to give you a few microcoping tips. Oops. And this is a quote I love from Mark Twain. This is definitely older than UX, that says, writing is easy. All you have to do is cross out the wrong words. And that is definitely a key in UX writing, and especially when we are talking about microcopying, because microcopying is when space is restrained. You don't have a lot of space. So you do definitely have to be able to know which words you need to cross out, which are the important words you need to keep, and what are the words that you don't need. So like I was saying, sometimes space is a constraint. This especially happening in certain elements of web design, like page titles, headline, taglines, email subjects. summaries, hints, tips, or explainers with mouse over, that there the space is a constraint. You have a small space. So you need to be able to communicate key information, but in a concise form. So that is why it's very important to choose your words wisely. And now I'm going to show you an example where not only are words chosen wisely, but they're chosen in a very strategic way. This is a price box for Airbnb. And right underneath the CTA book, you have this wording, this legend that says, "You won't be charged yet." Not only is that really concise and direct and to the point and motivating and functional, and it applies all the rules that we saw before, the place where it is strategic. Because right above the CTA, where you might get anxious, and the first thing you're gonna be thinking is, oh my God, am I going to get $276 charged in my credit card? They're actually putting you at ease and saying you won't be charged yet. They're motivating you to book, to click yes. See that this doesn't say buy, it says book. So Airbnb, they emphasize that you're not buying at their booking with this microcopy underneath the CTA button. So this is really important because, especially as designers, you have to start thinking strategically where to put microcopy, because that can make or break an interface. And this is something that really helps with metrics, and microcopy is so talked about and so well because when it's done right, it helps a lot to create better sales or whatever the metric that you're looking at. It helps a lot to increase it. So this is like the best example of not only is the content written well, the place where it's at, it's strategic and it's the best. Here we have another one who is amazing, and it's Netflix. Here, the strategy that they use is you have to choose here which is your profile. But instead of giving you an order and giving you the direction of please choose your avatar or please sign into your profile, please click your profile, whatever, they're applying the personality of the brand, which is really fresh, and they're asking you a question. They're asking you, who's watching? The question that they're asking you, it also talks a lot about the product. You're going to be watching something really cool in the next few seconds. Like, who's going to be watching? This is something really important, especially microcopying, to try to make a connection with the user by maybe asking questions and not giving orders, because orders might not be perceived as well. Like, only leave orders and imperatives with the CTA buttons, usually. So here it's an excellent example of how through microcopy and by using a question, you actually get more interaction from the user. This is from Medium. They have this, this is in the bottom of their newsletter, that they have this, and it's really good microcopy. It says, do you believe in destiny? Surprise me with a story. Like, I'm actually going to get my destiny from my next Medium story. Maybe you are, maybe you're not, but they are using this, they're appealing to you also here with a question, and by doing something really aspirational, like they're inspiring you. Do you believe in destiny? And it's just like a personalization strategy. So this is really good example of really good microcopy as well. And I'm just going to put this here because this speaks for itself. Look at the difference between the first Slack message that they had a few time ago. It gives so much information that you don't need. And the version that's actually in production right now, which just says, welcome. Slack is a messaging app for teams. Explore Slack. That's all they needed to say. And look how many space, how many words they take up here that nobody's actually going to read. So your main challenge is to try to go from this type of writing to this type of writing. Like I said in this section, writing is all about crossing out unnecessary words. So just keep that in mind and try to be really strategic with the words that you end up choosing. And the content brief is going to be a great tool for this because you're actually going to know if you need to say it or not. based on the user objective. Okay, so now we are going to work. We're going to do a workshop. Okay, so let's get our hands dirty. The first thing that we are going to do, I'm going to give you a content brief. I'm going to give you voice and tone guidelines, and I'm going to give you the content prototype. I'm going to give you the design, actually. And you guys are going to have to define which words you're going to write. So this is the content brief. The user problem and content. We are working for Mailchimp. Mailchimp just hired us, and they are our current clients. So the user problem and content is that the user needs to be able to decide which of the Mailchimp plans is better for their needs, suits their needs better. Our objective as a company is for the user to actually purchase our services. The target user is men and women between 18 and 45 that need a marketing platform for their business. And the channel, it's only web page. We're only going to be working with the web page. Here is the voice and tone guideline for Mailchimp. I'm going to give it to you guys. You're going to have it. I'm going to give it to you by chat. And this is the design that you're going to have to create content for. So you are going to have to define a naming for each one of the plans. And for this plan that wink, wink, it's $299, you are going to have to define which is the subtext that's going to be here, which is the content. Like this plan, you know, it's data-driven automation and optimization tools for businesses that want to grow fast. Okay, what are we going to say for the $299? What does it say here? Why do you think this is in yellow one? What wording would you actually choose to be here? And what are going to be the call to actions? Are they all going to be the same? Are they all going to be different? This is all for you guys to decide. I am going to actually give you only 5 minutes. I'm going to share. I'm going to share here through the chat. Okay, I'm gonna do it through Slack.
I just added everyone to the UX writing channel, so you can post it there if you want.
Yay, thank you. So I just shared with you guys what I just showed you. And I'm just going to give you 5 minutes for you to look at it, but I'm actually going to ask you to do it afterwards and share through the channel with us your answers. So, because we do have 15 minutes left and I want to get to the other part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up now for questions. These 5 minutes, you guys can look at it, see if you have any questions, if it's clear, if it's not clear. And then I'm just going to go ahead and ask you guys to do it in 5, it's probably not going to take you more than 10, 15 minutes. And we can discuss all together in the chat and see which are the best, what do we think are the best wordings for that section.
Sorry, did you share it in the?
Yes, in the Slack channel, the UX writing.
Oh, okay, got it. Sorry, just looking for it.
So if no one has any questions, we can later or you can chat me or through the channel, we can.
I actually just thought of something, which is along with helping them choose what plan they should have, I've also heard that sometimes obviously there's a business component to it. And so sometimes you actually kind of want them to go to a certain plan. So in this example, are we trying to get them to choose the $14.99 one?
Yes, that's really smart that you noticed that, because that's the yellow yellow thing up there. The companies for some reason saying this is something.
Yeah.
You guys need to think which are the words that would be strategic, but definitely Mailchimp already decided that they're going to prioritize that one over the other one.
So in a way, we can use our words to kind of drive business.
Definitely, and I think it's not. I mean, there's a huge difference between $299 and $14. I think there's also there like a little trick that they do, that through content you can also like think how to make this more obvious, because I think psychologically, you know, if you read 299 and then you read 14, you're gonna be like, oh no, 14, not 299. So maybe through the naming of the one that's 299, or maybe through the content you have to write down there, you can also like use words to help with this idea of, hey, this is really expensive and not worth it, maybe, you know, like I think that is the subtext that you should be thinking of conveying to the user, so he gets scared and buys the one you want.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so we do have only like 10 minutes left, so I'm going to go ahead with the last part of UX writing and research and user testing. And I hope you guys have fun with it, with the workshop, and just let me know any doubts, and you can just drop them in the chat, and we'll talk about it all together. Okay, so UX writing and research. UX without user research is not UX. And as I was saying before, there's a reason why UX writing is inside the UX field and it's not just copywriting. The first reason is what we saw before, that it's because we follow a process and we iterate through this process. So we are actually designing with words and we're not just writing. And the other reason is because we base our decisions on research. We just don't, we go out and find out as much as we can about our user. We just don't, it's not like we, oh, I like that, version of wrong answers. Okay, so, okay, I was saying, so we're gonna see now what are the tools for research that we can actually grab and apply when we are doing our UX writing. We are going to be using research tools for the brief. You can actually grab research tools and add the information that you found on those research tools to your brief. That way you have a more complete brief. And one of the tools is user persona. User personas are great for you to have information about your target user. You can learn their habits, their motivations, their goals, their activities. And if you have this information and you add this information in your brief, when you are creating the content, you're going to have that fresh in your mind. And that way you are going to have a content that it's more specific to your user persona. So this is a great tool in order for you to have when you're writing content. The other tool is an empathy map. This is really a good tool to also add in the content brief to define what is the mood of your user. So if your user is thinking that it's like, oh, this is endless. Okay, so you know the mood that your user is gonna be is bored or like, oh, I don't want to do this. They're going to be in a bad mood. So if you actually know this, you can maybe add a little joke or add something there to improve the mood of your user. So this is another important tool that you can extract information from the empathy map and add it to your content brief. And what I want, something that's very important, it's also to understand the culture of the user. And I'm just going to take 2 minutes to tell you about something. This is in Spanish because I don't have it in English. It's a job. It's for my old company. You guys might know that in Latin America, we all speak Spanish, but the Spanish is very different, like the Spanish from Argentina to Colombia to Mexico. And in the company I worked, we're all based in Argentina, and we all spoke Argentinian Spanish. But Mexico was our main market. So we actually needed to understand how to write more Mexican and how to be more Mexican. So what we did is we did a content research. We called it a content research in order to be able to localize content. And what we did is we made a survey that we sent out to Mexican users in where we asked them to write about their state. What is the best things about Monterrey? What can you do there? Tell me what you do on a weekend. We asked them a lot of questions. And of course, we gave them a prize for their answers. And then what we did later is, based on those answers, we applied a technique that's called Discourse Analysis. It's a communication tool that it's used a lot in communications, not so much in design. But we used that tool in order to extract what were the ways that people from Mexico wrote. What were words that they used to describe their city? How did they use, what adjectives were very local to them, were very natural to them? And then we stole their words and put them in our content and put them in an interface. So the only shout out I want to say here is that if you do have maybe in the future a client that is working with a particular market or is going to open up in a new market and we don't know, or we don't have people in that market to know how to write for those people, you can research that. It's really important that you learn that through methodology. You can learn how people speak a different Spanish, or also you probably know there's a big difference between the Portuguese from Brazil and the Portuguese from Portugal. They're completely different. So those things you can research, and understanding someone's culture is a way to get to their heart. So it's really, it's a very important tool that if you are ever working for a client that needs to penetrate a specific market, just keep in mind that you can do content research in order to understand the culture of their user. And if anyone wants to know more about that, you guys can just ping me, and I just wanted to leave it to you there that that's a possibility. I can give you more information about that if you want. And last but not least, user testing. UX writing testing is the fourth step in our UX writing process. And we are going to define it as 2 types of content testing we can do. We can do contextual testing or exploratory testing. What does contextual testing mean? Contextual testing is testing that is done during the actual consumption of the platform, of the technology, of the experiences in context. And we have 3 types that we're going to talk about. A/B testing, like or dislike, or incoming feedback. A/B testings are my favorite thing in the whole wide world because they're the only way you can empirically know what works better. So if there's any time that you can propose to do an A/B testing, do it. You do need to have a lot of traffic in order for it to be representative. But we did, in the company I worked before, we did an A/B testing in the button that actually, in the purchase button. And we did an A/B testing between purchase and book now. And the results were very big. Like we saw that with book now, people booked a lot more that wouldn't buy. And that's really important for you to be able to, if you have the opportunity, because you're working with a big enough client that has the traffic to do A/B testing, there's no way to slowly increment the value of your product and make a little bit more money, a little bit more money, and a little bit more money than if you are A/B testing, because you are continuously and constantly optimizing your experience and optimizing the platform. And with content, especially in CTA buttons, it's really important to be, if you are able, no? But if you are able to do A/B testing, like always try to pitch it, because it's guaranteed results. You're always going to be able to improve the metrics through A/B content testing. The like or dislike, these are the facts of Expedia. Yes, these are the facts, the frequently asked questions of Expedia. And you guys probably see this type of questions in frequently asked questions a lot, where we say, was this topic helpful? Yes or no? You also might see this, I think they took it out now. I haven't seen it in a while. Netflix had the like or dislike in the content, where you actually could say you could value the content. That's really good if you're probably testing out a new content section, to just ask, hey, was this information useful? Did you like or dislike this? That is a way to get a quantitative measure of how people are reacting with your content. And the third contextual method is incoming. I don't know if you guys know Hotjar, the tool, but you can actually buy it, and it's a tool that lets it's really easy to implement. You implement it inside your webpage, and it lets you do heat maps, click tests. And one of the tests that they have is this thing that it's called incoming. And what it does, you've probably seen it on a lot of web pages, that you have like a little face, like a little emoji, and in the side of the web page, and the user can say, for example, this content, did you like it, not like it? And they can write why they felt the way they felt about this content. This is something that you can also, this could be something anyone that has a web page can buy Hotjar. I think they even have a free version that lets you do a few heat maps for free. And it's a really good way of get contextual feedback for your content as well as your design. But I've used it a lot for content to try to understand if people were understanding maybe when you are communicating something a bit complex, like maybe how to use a coupon or something that has to do maybe with a refund. You can ask this as well to see if people are understanding or not understanding. And then we have exploratory testing. Exploratory testing is tests that we can do with the user before going on production, before deploying the content, before it being on the web page. And we can do this exploratory testing to understand better and iterate our content. So Cloze tests, I'm going to show it right here. This is a Cloze test done by Facebook. This looks a lot like the reading comprehension things that they did in grammar school, probably, and because it's exactly that.
That brings so many bad memories.
I'm sure. Sorry for that. And your users are probably going to have a bad experience there, but you get to learn a lot, because what you have to do here is you choose a design with in between 125 and 200 characters. And you erase every fifth word and replace it with a blank space. You see right here. You give that design to your user. You print it out or you send it through email and you give it to your user. And then you ask them to write down what they think the right word is in the blank spaces. Once they write down the words, they give it back to you, and you count the number of correct words and divide it by the total number of blank spaces. And if the results are more than 60%, the text is correct for the audience. I love this test because this test, what it does, it lets you understand how predictable your content is. Because if people can guess the fifth word, every fifth word that you put, then what you wrote is perfect. Anyone would be able to understand it, even if they're going to be scanning it. That means that your writing is on the game. And it's this, you're writing things that are predictable, and there's nothing better than writing predictable content, especially here when this is something like Facebook's privacy policy, you know, people are not going to be reading this. So it's a really good test that you can do anytime, and it helps you understand if your content is predictable or not. Then the highlighting test that we have right here. This, you can do it, also you can do it remotely. What you do is you send a print screen of your design to your user, and you ask them to highlight in one color what they liked, in another color what they thought was neutral, and in another color what they didn't like. And then you ask them why. This can also be done online. In PDF, you have the option of highlighting with different colors. So it's a test that could also be done remotely. And it's really good for you to understand more deeply what the user feels about the content. Like, I like these examples because, oh, this one was from Mariana. No, not really, but. So here you can see this user, like they said they didn't like this information because they had a lot to read. And like, they didn't even pay attention to the other one. And here you have another user who was like really detailed and really understood, oh, this I liked, this I did not like. But we do see that here in blue, that is what they didn't like. There was here information that maybe we can start saying, okay, why are we doing this? We can maybe take this out. This might not be as important. So this really helps you to get insights of what your users are feeling with your content. And then the last one, which is a really simple tool, it's called phoning a friend, call a friend. And what you do here is you ask a user to read your content, and then you ask them to explain it in their own words as they would explain it to a friend. This is also really good to do with, like, when you have something really complex, like also maybe a private policy or something that's like, that it's for an end user, but, or like how to validate a coupon, something that might be like complex to understand. So you give them what you wrote, your content, and then you take it away from them and say, okay, if you had to explain this to your mom, if you had to explain this to your friend in your own words, how would you explain it? And then what you do is you write down maybe words that they use, also to try to then later apply those words into your content. But it really helps you to see if they understood it or not, because if they can call a friend and say it to a friend, then they probably understood it. If they can't, they didn't understand it. So that's it. That's all we have for today. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. I don't know if you guys have any questions. Was that too much information?
That was so good. I feel like we can continue to have more sessions like that. I wrote down a couple notes / questions. I'd love to know what A/B testing tools you use at your other company. And then my other two comment was the Cloze testing. That was the first time I've heard of that, actually. So that was very helpful. I'd love to incorporate that into our process. And then as you were showing us, like the part where it says, was this topic helpful, the yes or no, I shot that over to Ed because I was like, you know, we should probably have something like that for our blog content, because we're writing and we're producing a lot of blog for SEO, but are these topics actually helpful for those who are absorbing the information? So send that over to him. And thank you, by the way. This was very, very insightful, Amelia.
Awesome. I'm very passionate about this. I could keep talking for hours. We used Fisher. That was the technology for the A/B testing. Yeah. And it's been really amazing. Like, I always get it wrong. Like, I was like, oh, this is going to rocket this content, and the A/B testing always came out the other way. So I like, for me, it blew my mind, you know, because it's like, and it's so statistically representative. And that's, I don't know if that's, I said that right, but it's really, it's an awesome tool.
I also just want to comment, Mariana's dog's running in the background. So cute.
Yeah, I'm in full house today. Lots of dogs and kids. So, you know, you might have some surprises in the background there. I added a couple more A/B testing. I don't know if I was spelling it correctly, but I think those three I've used as well: Optimizely, Usability Hub, and I think Google has one now for sites as well, which works with, if you already have Google Analytics, it can do, you with just that tag, you can do the same. I think it's just installing it. So I also had never heard of the Cloze test, so that's really cool. Scary because it makes me remember my reading tests, but wonderful for testing.
I can send you a few articles also if you want on the Cloze test.
Yeah, definitely. I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. I think it's super useful to have always this into account, the part of the voice and the tone. I mean, for example, when as not in the UX UI design that I've been working, but in marketing and advertisement, it's always part of the style guide that we have to develop. Like, the first thing, you start with the tone, and then you start with the voice, and then with the tone. And after that, it's super easy to continue designing the messages and designing all the content. And yeah, I think probably something that we should start to include, like probably in a small amount in the design systems, like, hey, the tone is this one and the voice is this one, and we should always have it in mind. And it's easier then when we start growing during the design to know what to write and exactly how to write it in there. I think Airbnb does it. I will share with you a talk of the UX, one of the UX designers that talk about the future of the design systems, and they start with the value, and they start with the voice and the tone, and then they go with the components and other stuff in there. But yeah, super useful. Thank you, Millie.
I totally agree, Juan. I think it would be awesome to incorporate it.
Yeah, and from a sales perspective too, there are leads and clients who they don't expect us to do the writing, but they want us to provide them with guidelines of like, hey, like we need help with content, and we will bring in our own SEO content writer or our own marketing person, but we need your help to tell us where each writing piece needs to go. So that's something for everyone to consider as well.
Awesome.
Yes, it's not part of our job, but I think that to deliver that, it's always better. We're like delivering something complete. For instance, when we started at Modify, I always say this, but Sarah is like such a great UX writer. So when we provided the final hi-fi, the CTO was like, we don't need a copywriter anymore. It's like, you guys nail it, Sarah, we love you. So it was good because they weren't expecting that, but we helped them, and now they are using that. And okay, tweaking, of course, because it wasn't like the final product. It's still not the final product, right, Debbie? But yeah, it's better to have it, and probably we can use simple tools that won't like take a lot of time, and it would be a lot better as a deliverables for the client and as a guidance, as Juan said as well.
Definitely. I'm going to share my screen 1 second. This model, it says that sound, that clear and appropriate wording, language, and content should actually be like the sound of a web page. And like, if the user need is here in the middle, then the ease of interaction should be, and like the sound is before the look and feel, like Juan was saying, like that they, like how they did it in Airbnb. First, you should define like, what is the voice and tone? And then you should define, okay, this should be the color, this should be the way the visual design looks. But I think everywhere we first do the visual design and define the visual design, and then the content, the words or the voice of tone. And I think it's probably because of time now, and like the design is what you actually need to code, and like the hard part in that. So I think that's why we do that everywhere. But I think this model, I'll show you this with you guys too. Like, I like this idea of thinking like, okay, it's the way it sounds. Like, that's so much, first you hear it, then you see how it looks.
Yeah, that definitely helped me in when we were doing the exercise for Mailchimp, and that yellow highlighted area, like as you guys can see in the Slack channel, I wrote like, oh, that we can put recommended or most popular, and then I went back and read what the Mailchimp tone is, and it was, you know, humor is dry and it's very informal, and that's why I rewrote like, okay, it should be like best bang for your buck, because it's a little bit more like informal. Yeah.
So,
Actually, I really like that graph that you showed because I was going to ask about how, as product designers, and especially at WANDR, it's usually just us doing it and we don't have a UX copywriter with us. So it's sometimes hard to balance like designing, okay, where can I put text and then actually putting in the text. So I always do Loren Ipsum because I don't have time. So I like this graph to, it's like something useful that we can use to explain to clients if we need like time to delve deeper into the copywriting or the UX writing.
On a side note, there's a, if you guys are using Loren Ipsum, there's a website that gives you hipster Ipsum. It's like all words hipster. Fun fact.
Nice. I used to use one that was like bacon Ipsum or something like that. That was all about like meat and stuff. But
Can you share these links, please? I would like to try that.
The hipster Ipsum is super fun to read.
When I was doing a hi-fi testing once, one of the users, I just didn't know what to write in there. I had to fill in a description about a card. So I just went like, okay, Loren Ipsum, whatever. And when testing the hi-fi, the user concentrated at all times and trying to read the Loren Ipsum and just forgot about the test altogether. It was like, what is this? I don't understand what you're writing here, because I didn't know what that was. And I said then, okay, I have to fill in the description or else they get lost in there.
Yeah, yeah, and so I dropped in the link. They call it Hipsum, and I was gonna say, you know, if we can try to avoid Loren Ipsum altogether, that would be very helpful. Because to your point, Marlon, like people are going to read it and they're going to be like, well, this doesn't make sense, even though it's supposed to be a test. And you know, when I was a designer, one of the strategists I worked with, he actually like gave me like a 1-minute test because I was telling him, I was like, oh, I put a design full of Loren Ipsum, and he's like, replace it all. And I was like, I don't have time. And he's like, yeah, you do. I'm giving you a minute, replace all the writing right now. And he actually timed me, and it forced me to just write a bunch of content, and it worked. Like it wasn't the best content, but it was content that actually made sense in context. So when you can, do try to replace Loren Ipsum.
It helps a lot.
Yeah.
Even though it's not very good, it helps more than just having nothing.
yeah, Loren Ipsum, some copy is better than no copy, right? And I think like what Emilia is saying is like good copy is also part of the UX. So and I think also like when you're talking about like the use for prototypes, if you're going to present something to the client, sometimes it is good to use Loren Ipsum so that they don't get confused and think, oh, this is good copy. But if you're going to do user testing, you need to have at least some type of copy for them to like understand the feel, right? So prototypes have different meanings and contexts, and sometimes it's good to say, hey, this isn't refined copy, and sometimes you need to get the gist of what you want to say. So I think that's important.
definitely, and it being functional, you know, like UX content has to be functional. If it, a Loren Ipsum is definitely not functional, so that's I think like, you know, you can have a good or better copy, like you were saying, Mariana, but if the user doesn't understand what they have to do with it, it's not anything. It's not done.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Amelia. I'm gonna hop off to prep for my next call. That was awesome.
Great.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. That was awesome.
Thank you, Milian.
Of course, well, hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will send the presentation and links and everything on the chat.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.